Okay, let's get started through this. This is saying, what do we need to put in our assignment around the topic of marketing? And you guys just did marketing as part of the entrepreneurship unit last term, so you should have some ideas. The things you want to identify in the company you're looking for. So for me, it's Uber. What's the competitive advantage of the company you're looking for? What's some analysis of their key competitors? What are the target markets and how have they gone about breaking the market up into the ones they're actually going to meet? And the 5 Ps, or 4 or 5 Ps, depending on how you want to look at that, with people being the extra P.
Sorry about it. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
That's all right. You can ask questions. That's fine. Okay. Competitive advantage is about what sets a business apart. Why do the customers choose that business? And it's going to be really interesting to think about if you're looking at something like a Google or Amazon, because you guys can be customers of this. You have to use both primary and secondary research. Primary research can easily be you guys like seeing what happens on their webpage, making records of how good their searches are. If it's Amazon, for example, going to there and seeing what happens when you use the site. Secondary research isn't going to be a problem. You're going to do a lot of that. You're probably going to have a lot of that around research on your competitors and things like that. But doing some primary research, stuff that you actually observe, is going to be important. So once you've looked at competitor advantage, you have to then say, like, how strong is it? Is it something that's really, really sustainable? Is it going to be there in the long term? Does it provide a lasting advantage? Because remember, you're making this decision. Do you want to invest in this company? Do you want to invest in this company? And these are all going to be parts of it. Just shout out when you've got any questions at all. Now, the one element of looking at the competitors is to say, okay, so marketing is about, part of marketing is about saying what are our competitors doing and how do we fit in amongst that? Competitors, you'll have to be careful who you choose. Some of them are pretty easy. So Amazon's not too bad. You could choose a couple of online sites. I just bought a book from another online site. It's pretty easy to find. You may not choose one exactly the same. You might then choose a real-life bookshop like QBD or something like that. For Uber, the number one competitors are going to be existing taxi service, and then you might say, well, maybe another competitor is the limo service. And so when you look at your competitors, you might start by doing a quick description of what they do, look at their competitive advantage, see if that's a little bit different, and compare businesses using the quadrants on this slide that I skipped over. But you guys might remember this from last term. This was saying, okay, you can talk about a business based on quality, from low quality to highest quality, and cost is an expensive one to low cost. So for example, if I'm looking at Uber, and that's going to be the example I keep giving you guys, I might say a limousine service is a competitor. Well, a limousine service is going to be high cost and high quality. Right, so it's going to go right up into this corner here. Taxis are going to be lower quality and still on the high cost side of things. Uber is going to be lower cost, okay, and you'll have to decide where the quality is, because Uber does say they insist on relatively new cars, and you might say that's something that they can use to manage the quality. So that's a way of just analysing where your competitors sit on that table. Target markets. This is the second thing I'd be looking at here. Who does your business target? And obviously, because there's an online element of it, you're going to have people who have internet access. Okay, that's what they're looking at. Remember, a lot of them are global businesses, so think about wealth on a global scale. I reckon Amazon.com probably doesn't sell too many books to Timor, for example, which is a very, very poor nation. So still be thinking about, where does wealth fit into that situation? So a target market, this is the definition. This is the group of relatively similar people that get targeted. They might be similar on different things. It might be similar around age. It might be similar around lifestyle. For example, a vegetarian restaurant. It might be similar around hobbies. A basketball magazine tends to target those people who play basketball.
Would you want us to include definitions in our study?
No. Don't put definitions in. In this case, just using the words properly in their context shows me that you know them. Yeah. Okay. And then you're looking at saying these people are going to react in the same way to the price and the product and the promotion that I do, the place that I have, and maybe the people who are involved. And maybe if you want to go the 6 Ps, the physical evidence. Okay, that's the thing. So you're looking to say, who are they really targeting this at? Some of them are really broad, okay? And some of them are niche marketing. Undifferentiated is really broad. My feeling is something like Google is pretty undifferentiated. They want to look at everyone. Jesse, I'll have this up on sector, so I feel you have to copy everything down. Undifferentiated is really broad, and I think something like Google is pretty broad, but there are things that they're going to have in there. So you're going to need computer access to benefit from Google, for example, and that wipes out quite a reasonable portion of the world population. But beyond that, they're pretty undifferentiated. The niche market, I'm not sure any of you doing online businesses that are true niche markets. I think most of them are pretty broad. Some of the fashion and things, they start to get down to a smaller market. Amazon's pretty broad because it sells such a variety of books, but I guess it would market towards people who are more readers. So I don't think it niche. I think most of them use more of an undifferentiated, broad brush strategy. Okay, and you can break it down into a few things. Geographic's going to be really interesting, because most of you are going to have a really huge geographical area that just everyone in the world who uses a computer, Google will want using their search. Demographic, age, gender, married, single, those things, and behavioural. Like, is your business targeting people with certain behaviours? Some examples of demographics there. Behavioural, so the type of shopper, their interest is probably a big one. You know, what are they interested in? Social position. So social position returns to people who like prestige products like BMW, something like that. I'm not sure it's as big a thing for some of them. I think some of the fashion outlets might appeal to people who see themselves in a certain way socially and choose to purchase in that way. I guess type of shopper is going to be a key one. Obviously, they're looking to encourage people to be online shoppers, and there might be some information about who does that. This is the process. I wouldn't think this is important. This is the process of sort of breaking the market up. Who do you want to target? How are you going to do it? And how are you going to actually position your product there? I don't think that's as important for this. And this is important just in one way. You can just target, right, one big market with a simple message. But even within the big companies, they might be subtle in saying, okay, we want to target this group of consumers this way. Amazon, for example, might particularly be looking to try and reach university students through one strategy, and business people through another strategy. And they have some really interesting products. So maybe they're doing a variety of marketing to work with that. This is probably going to be of more interest to you, and I apologise that we haven't quite got that the right way round. I might just click on it here. It looks at some of the different elements that you can use to differentiate on. So demographics, so it's got, or geographical, it's got city size, where it might be, climate. Demographic, some of those things we talked about, age, income is probably going to be pretty important. Psychographic and behavioural, what different things they have there. So you have a look at that, and that might give you some more ideas there. Now, I've done this as an example for Uber, and I'm going to keep using Uber as my example all the way through because it's an online business similar. And I've just done this table that shows how I might set up the 5 Ps for my company. So price is the first thing. I think this is really important for Uber, and I think that their competitive advantage is going to be around price. They are going to be a little more responsive and generally low price. However, they have this funny thing with their pricing. I don't know if you've come across it. It's called surge pricing. The idea of surge pricing is, let's assume that it's New Year's Eve. It's really hard to get a taxi after midnight New Year's. Actually, I was in New York for New Year's Eve this midnight, right? And there's I think they said there were some millions of people in Times Square waiting for the ball to drop there. So you can't get a taxi at that time. But what they have is surge pricing. And so trips, which are usually much cheaper, can become 10, 15 times more expensive than they usually are. And people pay that because they're really desperate to get home. And what it does is it encourages a whole lot of Uber drivers to drive at that time because they can make really good money out of it. So it's an interesting concept. They have that interesting pricing concept, surge pricing. The place. They're in 58 countries already. They're moving to be a worldwide organisation. Importantly in place, just doing a little bit of research, they're now operating out of Los Angeles Airport. That's really important for them. If they start to be seen as a genuine taxi alternative, then I think that's very, very powerful. So the product, it's based around an app. It's based around an app. The promotion, word of mouth, some guerrilla-sized stuff. They do a lot of publicity. They get a lot of media stories. So publicity refers to stories in the newspaper and things like that. Josie.
What's guerrilla?
Guerrilla. Yeah, what it means is guerrilla marketing, the example we looked at last term that does guerrilla marketing is messages on hold. And so they don't actually pay for advertising, but they get people to hold up their signs in sporting events and sporting crowds. So it's sort of like less traditional tactics. It's more aggressive. And some would say it's not entirely ethical. So it's things like, remember we showed you the picture of the Kathy Freeman winning the gold at the Olympics? You might have been away that day. She won the gold at the 2000 Olympics at Sydney. As she came around the corner, someone in the stand had been paid or had bought the ticket specifically for this from the company, was holding up a messages on hold sign advertising that company. Now they're not meant to be advertising in that arena, but they're actually doing that. They're getting brand out there. And so that was how they do it. They might take a whole lot of things to football games and hold them up there. They had pictures of the Queen's visit. They held pictures of their brand up there. So it's that side, that sort of not necessarily ethical, but quite aggressive advertising. And that's part of the Uber brand, I think, is that they're a bit edgy. You know, they're not. There's questions about how well licensed they are and all those things, but they leave that to the competitive advantage and saying we're cheaper than any other option, and that becomes important. And the people, the individual contractors who work in the cars. Okay, there's nothing too special about the people at this stage. And they do generally, I believe they have a 7-year limit on the cars, right? So they have access to a late model car. So once you've talked about the marketing, described the marketing, maybe done a bit of a competitor analysis, decided what the target market is. The other way you can do a competitor analysis, but I think it's a little bit over the top, is to do a SWOT for your competitors. I think that's a little bit, I don't think that's necessary in this case, but it's another strategy you could use. So, okay, what are the issues out of a marketing analysis? So for me, for Uber, the big issue is that price is really important. They'd want to be promoting on price, but price can be limiting too. Because what's to say that Tiffany doesn't start a competitive brand and it just does it a little bit cheaper? So the other thing that's really important for Uber, I think, then becomes their brand. How well does their brand become known and what does it mean to people? A little bit like, for example, doesn't matter how good your shoes are, it's going to be tough for any company to compete against Nike for a very long time because their brand is so well recognised. So I think with Uber, the fact that they're low price is okay until someone is lower comes in. So what impact does that have on your recommendations? You know, you've got to have some concern about about whether in 10 years or so on they're still going to be the only person who's using apps to have as a ride-sharing program, and how well they're going to build their brand so that they become recognised as the number one option.